Hey, lots of happening. Trumpy's basically come back and he's revised some of his hardline approaches to the tariffs. A little bit more flexible. I think that's typical of Trump, as he normally comes out sort of all guns firing and then all of a sudden just comes back a little bit. Anyway, time will tell. He also said that if anyone imposes tariffs on the US, they will actually do an about face and they will put similar measures on. So a lot of people are starting to question what's happening there. We also saw some company earnings out of the States too. Nike came out not that positive, and also FedEx plunged 6.4% on the back of earnings reports. So a lot of revisions there. Still think there's a possibility that we go into recession in the States. Anyway, let's see what happens. We had the quadruple witching hour last Friday. A lot of volatility. A lot of volume went through. That's basically when you get stock options, index futures, index options, and single stock futures all expiring at one time. And that can create a lot of volatility. Although the markets did end up a little bit higher, quite positive, still sort of down and still got that bearish sort of feel around it. We're still short the S&P. Gold continues to perform well, had a great move up to the top side. Interesting also, we've got escalation in geopolitical concerns, obviously in Ukraine, Russia, and also more importantly, Israel, Palestine, where we're seeing the Israelis just coming in hard again. Don't get it? Anyway, a lot of resistance at home there. That might support the precious metal, but I think people are saying, well, it's had a good move, so a little bit of a correction. Just remember, on the precious metal, we are seeing, obviously, central banks in there, particularly China, doing a lot of buying. So there's more on the trade to the top side, but I think we're just going to have a little bit of a breather. Okay, locally, it's been quite interesting in the last couple of days, or particularly this morning. This morning we had PMI data came out, all very positive. And in fact, when you look at it, you can see that the local S&P PMI for manufacturing reached a 29-month high, 52.6 in March. Now that sort of bodes well when we try to get that election date out of Albanese, because I think whilst you're on a good thing, stick to it. And I think that's what we're going to see from the Albanese government. All things seem to be good. A lot of positive things that they can get out of it. We've got budget too this week. Budget in Australia, the 2025 budgets are handed down by Dr. Jim Chalmers. So that's going to be interesting. Suggest this, and I have reiterated the report as to what sort of budget it will be. But first, let's have a look at the PMI data out of Australia. I think that to me is quite important, because when you compare it against the rest of the world, now this is the PMI for manufacturing, and it was a strong data. As I said, 29th in a row, 29th reading in a row that it was positive. We are looking at that, if it's above 50, it means it's expanding. So in my mind, that paints a very good picture for the manufacturing against all the other things that we're sort of quite bearish about with equities. But it does put in a quandary whether what we do with the positions, more about that later. But I guess when you look at it, you've got some good number coming through. You've got a budget that's going to be one that we feel will be all about. Well, he certainly dubbed it, relief, repair, and repair, relief, and reform. So I think that's going to be an interesting, but I don't think it's going to be a budget that's going to create a lot of movement. It's going to be a steady budget, because remember, we are coming into the election period. Now, Albanese hasn't announced it. 17th of May is the core date there, and that basically means that he has to call it by then. I expect him to do it sooner rather than later, and I think that everyone's starting to wind up into election mode. So if anything, they're pretty good. And I think a lot of people actually thinking that Labor will get in again. Anyway, let's see what happens there, but it will be quite close between the two parties. But I think at the end of the day, people are quite happy with what they've got, and they might just sit there. I'll just go back onto the PMI data, because in the report I've included a comparison between the UK, the US, China, and Australia. And Australia is breaking out by itself. So I think it is quite interesting to work out why, particularly in the manufacturing sector, we're going well, considering that we decimated it for such a long time. But that confidence is certainly there, and that's, I think we'll get the date sooner rather than later. But it is interesting to see that Australia has just shot out higher. China's starting to move up, which feels into our general feeling that China is moving out of its stagflation, and of course the UK and the US have all pointed bearish and heading below. They are below that 50, so basically says that the manufacturing sector there is contracting. Okay, so that's about it. Let's go into have a look at some of the trades. This week we've got a few things out. Several Federal Reserve officials in the United States will be talking. We've got S&P Global PMIs. Once again, that's going to be quite important. CB confidence data, durable goods orders, and the final reading in Q4 GDP in the States. We've also got some housing data, which I think are good. S&P Case-Shiller reports on home prices. And we've also got other PMIs for Japan, India, France, Germany, and Europe and the UK. In Australia this week, we've got the inflation data, and I think that'll be something that we'll keep a good close eye on.